Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. What a mouthful. Unlike the title, the game itself isn't actually that long, if you're skilled enough. Me myself, not the case. Look, I've never really played any of the Metal Gear games, and I'm not entirely sure how this game fits into the broader franchise. My understanding is that in terms of chronology, it is the latest entry, but this is more of a spin-off title based around Raiden. The only thing I can remember from the mainline games is this scene. Anyway, I've always been interested to check out the franchise since its infamy as a great stealth-based espionage game has held strong even today. And though I do know this isn't going to be a fair representation of what the mainline games are, I thought it'd still be a good launching off point to check out the franchise. So this is my retrospective review of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Fancy meeting you here.
You knew I'd come. I suppose I should thank you for not killing everyone at the launch site.
Well, not if you say it like that.
As I mentioned previously, the only real experience I've had with this franchise is that one section where you get peed on, and maybe these sound effects that have transcended the franchise. So I can't necessarily comment on how this game feels compared to the other Metal Gear games. I do know that Hideo Kojima has become quite infamous for being the main lead on these games, even though he has since left Konami.
Stay tuned.
I have also heard a heap of good things about the franchise in general, and even for this spin-off game. Though I'd say I'm not all that familiar with Platinum Games, I know they definitely have their audience, and I can only trust that there's a good reason for it. In fact, upon doing research on Metal Gear Rising, I found out that they're also the team behind Nier Automata, which is something I've yet to play but am very interested in. Now, starting off with the graphics. Initially, I didn't find them to be that great. I mean, I do understand that this game is about 11 years old at this point, but even then I feel like they aren't that impressive. I think my issue is that there's an almost motion blur-like filter or something present that actually makes it look worse than it is. Like, if they had just left the game without this, the visuals would be far better looking, I think. Especially during cutscenes. I mean, all things considered, I wouldn't say they're bad. And it's probably not a fair comparison, but like, The Witcher 3 came out 2 years after this game and looks pretty phenomenal, even before the next gen upgrades. I'd probably compare the graphics in this game to something like 2010's Darksiders. After spending more time with the game and getting accustomed to it though, I did come to really appreciate the look and style. I would, however, criticize how flashy it is, like when you first start off, because it can be pretty distracting, especially when you're still trying to learn the mechanics.
Very good.
The art style in this game I thought was pretty interesting. It has this almost overdone cyberpunk cyborg tech feel, but in a sort of Japanese or anime style. I actually really like how old school and cool it looks. It reminds me a lot of those random art pieces you might find on Instagram when you're doom scrolling. A lot of the style reminded me of the 90s or early 2000s anime, like Pat Labor or that giant spider thing in Ghost in the Shell. Like, it's all very mech or tech inspired and feels like something out of Armored Core. Again, I'm not that familiar with the mainline title, so I'm not exactly sure how well this fits into the franchise, but I think everything lines up, especially with that distinct mech influence. I also really like the overall style of the game and the character designs, even down to the regular enemies. I mean, except these guys, who are just really creepy. When it comes to the music, I was actually decently impressed. It has a certain intensity that really helps to add that excitement and energy, which in turn heightens the gameplay and story experience. One thing that always annoyed me about the Halo games I played is it really doesn't fully utilize its magnificent soundtrack. Like, all they had to do was loop it, but they don't. Metal Gear Rising doesn't have that issue. It's consistently present and felt, and the fast-paced electronic rock anthem is pretty damn good. The whole vibe reminds me of the Devil May Cry games. My only issue is it started to annoy me as I got really frustrated during some of these fights, because I'm not very good, but that's okay. Overall, there's a definite quality about the music though, and it fits into each fight sequence really well. Like, it usually starts with a high tempo, but as you enter each phase of the boss fights, more and more gets added until the fight is over. There's a really cinematic theme to it too, like something out of the Jason Bourne movies, which I personally loved. I didn't want to go into it too much, but I think the sound design is as expected. It's definitely good, but I wouldn't say anything crazy. Perhaps the outstanding musical score just outshone it. I will, however, mention that as a gamer, even one unfamiliar with the Metal Gear franchise, the whole alert sound effect was all too familiar and is just humorous to hear. Especially when it's used unironically in a game that's more about action than stealth. Having said that, there are stealth mechanics built into the game, and I honestly appreciated it because it can really help to speed up the progress and make things easier. There's also some Easter eggs which popped up in these funny moments where you can find a guy hiding in a cardboard box, which I think references a mechanic in the mainline games.
Well, another benefit. A peaceful application for all my research.
Since when do you care?
Well, recent events have been food for thought, shall we say?
No kidding.
Now, moving on to voice acting.
Let's go.
At first, I thought it was terribly overdone and overacted.
Oh, I see.
And something about Raiden's voice just grated me the wrong way.
I could say the same about you.
But after playing through the game, I realized a lot of the voice acting is actually really good.
Of course.
Especially some of the side characters.
Well, there is this new sushi joint I've been meaning to check out. But oh, right. I guess you're going to be kind of busy over in Pakistan, aren't you?
Like, there's definitely some weird or awkward bits, but for the most part, it's actually really good.
Hey, thanks, Sonny.
I think what I've come to realize is that it's not just the actual voice acting, but the over-the-top writing that's making the characters sound unnatural.
Now you're just being nasty.
There's also quite a lot of actual voice acting, which surprised me.
Looks like a war zone out here.
Throughout each of the levels, you can speak to your team, which gives you more context, hints, and extra information about the level you're moving through.
Simple, huh?
I mean, personally, I couldn't be bothered going into too much depth for this game, but I definitely appreciate that it's there, because it would have taken a fair bit of work to do.
That nickname you love so much. Want to know how I got it? Actually, why don't I give you a demonstration? I think it's time for Jack to let her rip.
Admittedly, I wasn't exposed to too much about this game, so I sort of assumed this would be a simple hack and slashy action game with some fun and crazy moments, and I was partially right. There are certainly some fun and crazy moments, but the gameplay isn't exactly simple. I mean, as someone who isn't very skilled, it isn't. But I feel like this is a game that has a super high skill ceiling. A lot of the combat in this game is based around your parrying mechanic and timing. I feel the game could have done a better job at explaining the mechanics, and I really wasn't that confident even by the third mission, so that definitely took away some of my enjoyment. One of the key parts of the combat though is the blade mode, which is a pretty cool way of expanding on the melee sword combat. It's similar to the Deadeye mechanic in Red Dead, where the world slows down and allows you to pick your target, or in this case your strike point. When you do find and manage to hit it, there is a pretty awesome finisher execution that plays, which allows for some pretty spectacular moments. It is still a pretty action-heavy title, and the whole mood feels like an arcade game, something like Time Crisis but with swords.
Like I said, kids are cool, Jack. And I'm very in touch with my inner child.
Now, when it comes to the controls, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is a game that I found really frustrating as a PC gamer. The thing is, the performance and optimization overall is actually pretty good. The controls though haven't translated as well. The main culprit for me is that even though I have a mouse, the blade mode forces me to use the WASD direction buttons to adjust my view. Why? Like, it's taken away one of the key benefits of using a PC in the first place. It just doesn't make sense and to me feels lazy, something I also had an issue with in Darksiders 1. One of my other annoyances though was just the mouse controls in general, which felt like an afterthought. I couldn't actually tell what it was specifically, but the movement just felt janky and choppy. I did end up going to controller for the rest of my playthrough, and it did improve my overall experience though. Like, I appreciate having the option to play on controller, but I really didn't like being forced to. Like, I think this is an example of PC ports being poorly done, and I really hope future ports are done better. Ghost of Tsushima, for example, is a game I'm really keen on, and I'm praying the port is done well.
I don't want this for anyone else.
All right, man.
The camera in this game can also be pretty annoying to use, at least for me. First off, it took me longer than it should have to figure out how to lock onto targets, which to be fair has happened in the past with other games. Even when the lock stayed on, any slight adjustments was hard to use because each time I adjusted, it just changed the targets, which also threw me off. Now, when I try to fight with the lock off, I can adjust the camera as I like, but the thing is, it starts to move on its own anyway, which then creates a similar issue whereby I can't see the enemy hitting me from off screen again. Look, I know it's probably a skill issue on my end, but I feel like it's just been done better in other games.
You have passed the last of the barricades. Save your strength. Find a vehicle.
Right. That should do nicely.
When it comes to the story, I definitely came into it blind. I'm not familiar with the franchise overall aside from a few trailer moments I might have seen in passing, so this was a completely new world for me. Considering how the game starts and how over the top some moments feel, there is a surprising amount of depth in this game. I was honestly hesitant to continue on until the third mission where more of the game's story began to unravel. Like, there's almost always a world-conquering threat in this type of story, but this title definitely touches on the deeper aspects of it. I mean, having said that, scattered throughout there are also some really comical moments that add some levity to a narrative that is otherwise quite serious in tone. There's also something to be said about Raiden, the tortured main protagonist that has to confront his own demons. Though the game mechanics can definitely feel at odds to this, but hey, at the end of the day, it is a game.
It is likely no single correct answer exists. Additionally, human conflict stems from opposing ideals and societal norms. I was not programmed with these guidelines.
An aspect I was a bit mixed on was the length of the cutscenes and how frequent they started to feel. I'm an older gamer now, and the cutscenes in a lot of older games felt like rewards for progressing and helped to add story context. Metal Gear Rising in some ways started to feel like a movie, and although it's not inherently bad, it can start to feel distracting and poorly paced. Like, I've heard mentioned God of War 2018 being like a movie, but with that game you're in the movie. This game feels like you're just sitting back and watching episodes of a show. I mean, if it wasn't for the demanding gameplay mechanics, I would have said there are too many cutscenes. I mean, overall they're pretty well done and enjoyable, but boy are they action-packed. Like, I jumped on this right after Mad Max, a game I thought had a lot of spectacle, but it's nothing compared to this game. Every moment is high-octane and over-the-top and excessive. And I mean, it's not just the cutscenes, but every in-game combat moment is also filled with non-stop action. I honestly didn't mind it, but I think it can get very jarring at first because of the visual assault your eyes would be met with when you first start.
Let's get this over with.
Look, there is definitely value here. I honestly didn't think I'd recommend this one initially, but looking back at the depth both in terms of story and gameplay, I have to admit, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is still worth playing in 2024. If you've managed to sit through this whole video, thank you so much for watching. I'm still looking to upload a brand new video once a fortnight, but be sure to let me know what else you'd like to see in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully, I'll catch you in the next one.